Hey everybody, this is Andy Melbuff, and in this video we're going to take a look at how teachers can create feedback for Cardsorts in Desmos Activity Builder using the computation layer. Cardsorts are really popular with math teachers as they give students some great interactive engagement opportunities. And so how do we let the students know that they're sorting them correctly? So I'm going to look at several different versions of that in the computation layer. So let's go ahead and get started. Now I've got just a pretty simple card sort set up here, and I've configured this so that the feedback for the students goes in the subtitle. Well, what's the subtitle of the slide? Right below that, here is the subtitle. So right now, the message to the students is that they have at least one card incorrect. Well, they have all of them incorrect. So let's go ahead and do this. I have basically two categories set up. And you can also see up here in my dashboard preview for the teacher version that there's an X in here, meaning there's something incorrect. Now, when they sort them correctly, the teacher dashboard indicates a correct check, and now the subtitle has indicated that the students have sorted them correctly. So how do we go ahead and configure that in Computation Layer? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is exit into the edit mode. And here I've created a duplicate slide without any of the computation layer in it. Okay, so here are those same 5 slides we had set up before. Now I need to name this card sort, and I can just simply name it card sort. I spelled card. So now that that component is named, I want to go up to the computation layer. It's right here, sorry, for this screen. And this is where I can add what I want to put in. Now, what I want to put in is a variable, and I'm just going to use the variable match, and I'm creating a variable match based on certain conditions. So I want to identify that with the card sort that I just created, and it's got a capital S in it. And then I want its source to be matches key. This third one down. The source is going to be matches key. Basically, what that's saying is we're going to define the variable match as coming from the card sort. Does the student's input or dragging match the answer key that was provided? Then what I want to do is I want to put in the feedback. To do that, I'm going to create another variable. I'm going to call it display. I'm going to give it some conditions. When match occurs, basically when the variable match conditions exist, I'm going to have feedback that says, great job, all are correct. You can feel free to put in any emojis that you want to use. I'm going to close that off with the parentheses. And anytime we use when, we have to use otherwise. Once I close that off with a second quotation marks, my little warning symbol goes away. So I've got two variables here. I've got match to determine if the students matched it correctly. And then I have another variable, display, which is going to, what I'm going to use to give the students some feedback. Is I'm going to put something in the subtitle. Subtitle is a sync, so it's teal colored, and we use a colon after it. And what I want my subtitle to say, how am I doing? Meaning the students might see this. Actually, I don't want to close that off yet. Now, I want to include the feedback for them right after that question mark. So right after that question mark, I want to insert the variable display. To do that, inside of a note here, I have to use the $sign, curly brackets, and then I can type in the word display. And as I start typing D, all available variables show up there. So this is the notation right here, how we insert a variable created earlier. Now, you'll see I still have a warning symbol here. It's unterminated because I have to start this with a quotation mark and I have to end it with a quotation mark. So it says I still have, oh, I spelled subtitle wrong. There's no capital T in it. I apologize for that. There we go. Now the warning symbol goes away. So let's see how this looks here in preview mode. Again, I have a couple of categories here. Let me go ahead and just drag. So far, here's my subtitle saying at least one card is incorrect. And when I bring this last card over to here, my subtitle changes to being correct there. On a little side note, the teacher dashboard, we don't have to do anything for that. That's set up based on the teacher's answer key. So that's automatically generated when students correctly match up cards. This is automatically taken care of in the background. It's kind of like the correct check for multiple choice. A second way teachers can add feedback for Cardsorts is to put the feedback on the next slide. Okay, if they don't want to use the subtitle, if it's getting too congested looking. So here's a little bit more complicated look here. And I want you to see how the feedback is necessarily going to look. We're asking students to match together trig graphs with trig equations and features. So if we start dragging some things together, I'll just leave it with these three cards sorted, and we go to the next slide. Here's the feedback that shows up. Okay, this piece of feedback says you have three cards sorted correctly. Basically, go back and keep going. So amplitude 1, let me just drag these into a little bit better view here. Now going to the next screen, the feedback gives a little bit different message, etc., etc. So this is a two-slide sort of production where we have the card sort on one slide and we have the feedback on the next slide. So let's go ahead and jump in and see how we do this in the computation layer. Now here's the first of the two screens in the card sort that has those trig functions in them and graphs, etc. Now I'm going to name this component Cardsort2. I don't want to name it just the same way I named the first one because I'm tying the feedback on the next page into this specific component. So I want to make sure I have an identifiable way to tag that. So I'm going to call this just Cardsort2. There's nothing else the teacher has to do on this page after setting it up. In this second page, there's nothing here more than a note. That's all it is, and you can see the feedback variable showing. Now, in here, this is our card sort feedback, and I want to actually build this from scratch. So I'm going to close this off, and I'm going to go into this next one where we build this from scratch. So building this from scratch, I'm going to go into this blank computation layer script, and I'm going to use my feedback variable again. You can simply use a word, a letter, it's up to you. And I'm going to use a when situation. And I want to apply this to my previous screen. Now, my previous screen was titled Cardsort2. So that's already populated my list of aliases. Those are the components available. And then after that card sort, there are only certain sources available to the teacher to use. And you can see a list of those top three sources there. Now, we already saw matches key earlier, but if we want to set this up the way I just showed you, if I want to give the students some feedback as they go, I want to use total correct cards as my source. And I want to know if that's equal to Cardsort2's, and then its source will be total cards. I want to know if these two are going to be matching up. Okay, this part here is basically the correct number of them, and I want to know if the student's total cards correct matches with that. Okay, so then after that, I'm going to put in my feedback, close that in parentheses. Then I need an otherwise. When I start with a then, I have to use otherwise. We might have a message to them that says You currently have. Now I want to insert a variable in here. So to insert a variable, I'm going to use the $sign, curly brackets, and then I want to insert the variable from card sort number 2, and I want it to be total correct cards. I close that off with a curly bracket. So this will insert the variable in this feedback message. So you currently have that number of cards sorted correctly. And I can add more, add less, whatever I'd like to do there. So there's the two pieces of the feedback message. I want to insert my feedback variable. And let's take a peek at it in preview mode. Now, right now, I'm previewing on this screen. I don't have any sorted correctly, so I want to go back to the screen that has the card sorts on it. And let's go ahead and pull these in. Oops, I made a mistake there. That one's not correct. So here's a good example of moving too quick. Now let's say I stop right there and I go and check my feedback. Oh, it says I have 0 cards sorted correctly. Okay, so I've got a feedback error somewhere in here. Okay, I found my mistake. When I was setting this up, when I made my duplicate slide here, I renamed this card sort 3, so it would be differentiated from card sort 2, but I didn't apply that in my feedback. So that's a fairly simple fix. I'm just going to replace card sort 2 with card sort 3 because it was reading my previous card sort for feedback. I'll do that in these 3 spots. And let's try it out again. I have 0 sorted correctly. I'm going to go back to the screen and I'll do my sorting here. So that should give me 3 correct. Check. And if I go ahead and finish this up, drag these up into view here a little bit better. This should give me all of them correct. Okay, so there's the other piece of feedback. Great job. You can expand upon that level of feedback if you wish. I'm going to show you one more type of card sort feedback. This one's far more sophisticated. In fact, I did not create this. I found it. I don't remember who I found it online with, but I thought it was pretty cool to put in. So I figured I'd show you, and if you like it, feel free to copy it right here along with the following screen and insert that into your activity. So right now we have categories of triangles. Okay, so I want to just do a little bit of quick sorting. And I don't want to do all of this yet, but I'll put some in here. So right now I'm obviously incomplete, but on the next screen, there's a table set up for feedback, not just a note. Now, what this teacher did is set up students to have attempts at checking themselves. They didn't want them to just do guess and check over and over and over again, so they put an action button in here that allowed students to try up to 3 times to see how many they got correct. So I just put in 3 of them. If I click the action button 1 time, it populates this first cell in the table with try number 1, and it says I have these number of cards sorted correctly. Okay. There's also some text over here on the right for feedback as well. And ideally, what you're trying to get the students to do is go back and try again and maybe take a little more time with it, knowing they only have 2 more attempts. So let's go ahead and fill in a couple more here. And there's a lot going on this screen, so I apologize for that. Let's leave it incomplete at this point, but now I've got most of my triangles sorted. I'll drag the other ones out of here I haven't used yet. And let's check our feedback for try number 2, clicking the button. Now we're up to 10 out of 12 cards sorted correctly. So we only get 1 more attempt. And notice the author of this particular slide did a nice job of changing the button label for each attempt. And that's some pretty sophisticated CL there. Let's go back and finish this up. I have two that are unfinished. That's going to be a 30, 60, 90, and this will be a right triangle. And if we click try number 3, here's try number 3. We get the feedback. They're all sorted correctly. Different message here. And look, the action button is turned off. They get no more attempts at that. So we're not going to replicate this, but rather I'm just going to show you what's going on in the background. So first of all, on the card sort page, this card sort is labeled CS, just an abbreviation for card sort. Now, on this page, here's the note you saw on the right-hand side, and it's got some information in it. Yes, there's a lot there. There's also the table you saw, and that table is identified as table 1. And here's the action button down here, and it's labeled button 1 or abbreviated button 1. So first of all, in the table, the author of this made variables so that they wouldn't have to do quite so much typing over and over again. So the variable C can be used wherever we want to use the component card sort with the source total correct cards. And you can see subsequent variables down here for each of those. And then the variables C, D, B, and T get used down here to populate the different cells in the table. And you can also see, for example, right here, variables are inserted throughout these messages. Again, this is pretty sophisticated, and I'm not going to go through the build along with this with you, but feel free to play with this if you feel like you're ready for some more advanced work. That's in the table component. The button component also has several items here. I want to point this out. Notice it disables once the press count equals 3. So once the student presses it 3 times, the button becomes disabled, not usable. And you can see also, here's where the user put in the labeling, if you will, on the button. Okay, so that once you got to press count 3, the button shows no more tries, and it's disabled at the same time. Here's the note component again, and it's got basically using C equals D. Those are the 2 variables created up here. That's similar to what we did on the previous screen. So this one's, I think, in my opinion, far more sophisticated, but it's got some pretty cool feedback on it. So that's a little bit of an introduction to putting in feedback into card sorts using Computation Layer in Desmos Activity Builder. Thanks.